Hello, hello, hello. How are we doing? Welcome to A Rush to Judgment with Jessica, and I am Jessica. How is everybody? Everybody doing okay? Everybody doing well on this wonderful day? All right. Well, we are getting right back into the Nicole Nachtman trial. And we are continuing with the doctor's testimony. It is doctor's cross with the state is about to cross him. Defense has passed the witness to the state. If you guys have not been following me and are new, that is unfortunate. You should go back and watch some of this to catch up. That would be a great idea. But if you have not, and this is your first one, the doctors have testified. Two doctors have testified for the state or for the defense. They've both had a consensual consent. They both basically said that they considered Nicole to be schizophrenic and to show on a schizophrenic spectrum during the time of the incident. So that is the diagnosis that they have given her for that. And that is the insanity portion of the defense that they are going for. Sorry if you hear the scratching in the background. It is the puppy. She's not locked in her kennel currently, but she is in the kennel, currently scratching at the bottom of the kennel. Not really 100% sure why she is doing this, but probably just because I've pressed record. That's what makes the most logical sense. Because she was perfectly content sitting there chewing on her bone prior to me pressing record. But anywho, okay. So Nicole is on trial. Nicole Nachtman is on trial for the murder of her mom and stepfather. She is facing 2 first-degree murder charges in that case. And yeah. So that's about the gist of it. And now we're going to watch the cross from the state on this doctor regarding whatever questions they have on this one. So anyway, and just a reminder, I am not any type of legal expert, nor do I specialize in any particular area of educational information regarding any of these topics. I'm just here to add my opinions and critical or biased judgment on any various topics or subjects that come up. Excuse me. That I find interesting at the time. And so, if you enjoy this content or, have any comments, questions, concerns, whatnot, feel free to leave your comments in the comment section below. Let me know what you think. If you agree, you disagree, let me know. Love to start up some chat either way. But yeah, like, subscribe, comment, all of those things. It's really helpful to get the content out there and just get it known to everybody and the YouTube world. Okay, so let's get it started shall we? And we shall speed up that, put on some closed captioning. Jerry's presidency today. What else, baby? See the time later back. Okay.
Jerry's presidency. Did everyone else see the time? Ladies and gentlemen, Jerry, welcome back. Did anyone discuss the case, research the case, or was anyone exposed to anything about the case outside of the courtroom? By show of hands. No hands. Thank you very much. We're going to start with cross-examination. Mr. Kerry, you may begin.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning.
Now, Doctor, you were hired earlier this year by the defense, correct?
Yes.
Right.
Seems very quiet today.
The majority of times you testified in court, you generally testify for the defense, correct?
No, the majority of times I've testified in the court. I've been the court's witness.
The court's witness.
Oh.
That's a court appointed. But when you testify for either side, the majority of the time you've been hired, you testify for the defense, correct?
Yes.
And currently you're getting paid $250 an hour in this case, correct?
Yes.
Now, you have described to this jury various instances of some of which you categorize as physical.
They say that to show
abuse,
bias
correct? And
for.
all of that was self-reported by Ms. Nachtman, correct?
I believe all the physical abuse was, yes.
Right. For instance, there were no police reports of any physical abuse,
That's correct.
right? No DCF reports, no medical records, no witnesses, nothing like that.
Right.
And the same is generally true of the verbal abuse. Do you not agree?
Yes.
Now, I want to talk to you specifically about something you said yesterday. You accused Miriam Deans of gaslighting her daughter by showing up to pick her up from school, correct?
Yes.
Now, Doctor, you were not there at that time, were you?
No. And I didn't accuse her. I was just relating what was related to me and what my
You said you
opinion.
believe she was gaslighting her daughter, correct?
Yes.
Right. Just going to pick her up at school and surprise her, correct?
Oh, it was a little more than that.
Well, she was calling, telling her that Bob can pick her up, and then she shows up, correct?
Yes.
Right. Now, do you know what Miriam Dean was thinking at that time?
No.
You have no idea if she was trying to surprise her at school?
It would seem a little odd to call minutes before you were there and act like you're not there.
Well, have you seen these videos where officers come back from overseas and surprise their friends and surprise their family members? All these videos you see on TV. You've seen this, haven't you?
I don't watch that kind of thing, but I know what you mean.
And sometimes when people have been gone for a while, haven't seen each other for a while, surprise them. Would that happen?
I suppose.
But you don't know. You're just immediately assuming on behalf of Nicole Nachtman that that's what her intention was, to gaslight her daughter.
Yes, that's my belief. It was.
It could have been one of those surprises.
Now, the opinion of the
But you don't know.
And I understand there were other corroborating things you found from Eric, testimony from Eric Lear, I believe, and a few other people, as well as some documents from that you encountered. But the majority of the verbal and physical abuse that was described to you by a person who you described as schizophrenic and who we often know has lied to cover up her actions, correct?
Correct.
Right. She lied to her mom about bike, correct?
Yes.
She lied to her mom about her grades.
Yes.
She lied to the detective about how long she had been in Tallahassee.
Yes.
Oh no. What's happening?
One of them.
What did it do?
Keep going.
No.
One of them.
Abuse that was described to you by a person who you described as schizophrenic, and we often know has lied to cover up her actions, correct?
Correct.
Right. She lied to her mom about bike, correct?
Yes.
She lied to her mom about her grades.
Yes.
She lied to the detective about how long she had been in Tallahassee.
Yes.
She lied to her own uncle about how long she'd been in Tallahassee.
Yes.
She even tried to get her new roommate to lie for her as well, correct?
Yes.
Now, doctor, so again, much of the abuse you described has come from the words of Nicole Nachtman. Did you ever have a chance to review the text messages, State's Exhibit number 70? Did you ever review these text messages that went between the mother and daughter throughout the year before she was murdered?
Not physically. Yesterday I was in court when you confronted Dr. Heidi with them.
Right. And so this was not a part of your basis of your determination as far as the abuse of Nicole suffered.
That's correct.
Doctor, you've also mentioned you talked a lot to Eric Lear. Did you ever talk to David Lear?
No.
Right. David Lear was the cousin who had the most contact with him. Did you ever reach out to him or talk to him about what life was like there at the time?
No, I read his statement in his deposition. I didn't talk to him personally.
Now, I'm going to move ahead now to your diagnosis of schizophrenia.
Okay.
So you diagnosed with schizophrenia. Let me ask you, Dr. Ted, do you or do you ever treat people for schizophrenia?
I have
Okay, and what is the standard treatment for schizophrenia?
a combination of psychotropic
Medication,
medications
therapy.
and psychotherapy.
Now, do you prescribe medication?
No.
Now, you've already heard your testimony about your reasoning for schizophrenia. So I'm going to just say straight ahead to insanity.
Yes.
Now, I'd like to do this in increments if we could.
However you want.
First, have you read the indictment in this case?
I believe I have, yes.
Okay. In the indictment, the thing she's accused of doing is shooting Robert Lear and shooting Miriam Lear.
Among other factors, yes.
Deans.
Yes.
Deans. Robert Deans and Miriam Deans. So you're aware that that's what she's accused of shooting them. That's what she's accused of doing.
Yes,
You
of
agree?
course. Yes.
All right. So the first factor, you already indicated she had a mental infirmity disease.
Yes.
All right. The second factor also has to be proved in order for a person to be found legally insane, correct?
Yes.
All right.
One of those two.
One of these two, either A or B.
Well, no, one of the two in A.
Okay. So she did not know what she was doing or its consequences.
Yes.
All right. Now, based on the indictment in this case, the thing she's alleged to have done is to shoot someone.
Yes.
Now, is it your opinion, doctor, that she did not know at the time she was pulling the trigger that she was shooting Robert Deans?
Yes.
You do not believe she knew she was shooting him?
I believe that she was in a psychotic state. She was suicidal. She didn't know what she was doing.
She had held the gun to herself and was talking about killing herself, correct?
Yes.
And it was right around the time that she decided, no, she wanted to live, correct?
It's hard to say, but it was within a short period of time, yes.
All right. And
So
at
if she knew
time
that the gun
was
could kill
shot.
her, how did she not know that the gun would kill him?
So she knew what a gun could do, correct?
At some level, yes, she did know what a gun could do.
And she knew that if you pull the trigger, a gun could kill you. Because she sure was having it to thinking about killing herself, correct?
She says she was. I'm not sure. She seems to have been ambivalent about killing herself.
Just because she's ambivalent about it doesn't mean she doesn't know how it
Back
works.
on July 8th of this month,
Yes.
right? And do you recall me asking you a question? And this has to do with whether or not she knew she was shooting Robert Deans. You testified here today that you don't believe she's dead. I'm sorry, it's page 79.
And just so the record's clear, it's August 1st.
Oh, no, that's correct. And my question was, and we're talking about this very subject, I mean, because that to me would say that she didn't even know that she didn't know she was shooting a person. It seems to be pretty obvious that she knew that she was shooting someone. And your answer was, I think it was.
Yes.
So you do believe that she didn't know she was shooting someone?
Yes, but she didn't understand that she was killing someone or injuring someone.
All right, well, that leads us to the consequences,
Yes.
because the doing is the shooting. So you now just said, you do agree she knew what she was doing, she knew she was shooting the gun.
Yes, but she wasn't aware of what the consequences of that would be.
All right, so now let's go to the consequences. Let's discuss the consequences. What are the consequences of shooting someone with a gun?
There are various potential consequences. It
Correct, they could be injured, correct?
could be killed.
They could be killed,
It could
absolutely.
not be injured or killed.
Now, are you stating to this jury that at the time she pulled that trigger, because you already now said she did know she was shooting the gun, that she did not know that she was going to kill or potentially seriously injure Robert Deans?
That's exactly what I'm saying, yes.
What did you think she was doing?
She was in, I don't know what she was doing. She was in a psychotic state. She couldn't, her reality testing was extremely poor. She had no present capacity to think in rational terms. She was acting irrationally and in a psychotic state.
Well, Doctor, didn't she testify that immediately after shooting him, her first thought was, oh my gosh, the police are going to come, that was so loud?
Did you testify to that? I don't know.
Did she talk to you about that? Did she
Yes.
talk to you all?
Yes, yeah, after the fact, yes.
Yes. So right after shooting him, she immediately knew.
So after the fact, that's what she said in the moment.
She said at some point after she believed that, oh my gosh, This was
So like
while
in the
police were
moment,
involved.
how long
Agree
in
with
the
that.
moment do you have to be during this? Is it like just in the
So
moment?
Robert Deans is
Is it
dead.
like
Yes.
5 minutes
And
prior,
she went
5
out and
minutes
starts cleaning up,
after?
correct?
Like what's the window?
I don't know whether she started immediately, but sometime between the two killings, she did make efforts to clean up.
And she moves his body to another room. She locks him in that room, correct?
I don't know about the locking, but she moved him to another room.
Well, the door
And,
was locked.
The
So
next day comes, no police have shown up.
Right.
And at this point in time, she gets the word of the housing, correct?
She gets what?
Word that she's got housing,
Yes.
right? And she fills out all the proper paperwork for the housing.
I don't know when that was filled out. My understanding is that she had applied late.
Right.
And so I don't know if the paperwork was filled out that day or days earlier or months earlier.
So you haven't seen the records of her from her phone where she scanned in and sent a housing contract to?
I did not see that.
Okay, well, she did. So beyond that, she also had to get the money for the housing,
I'm
correct?
aware of that,
And
yes.
she went and saw David Lear, got the money for the housing,
Yes,
correct?
she did.
She knew what she was doing, getting all the stuff so she could get her housing done, correct?
sounds
Yes.
like he doesn't like know key parts of the story.
And then she knows her mom's coming home, correct?
Correct. Well, she doesn't know when, but
But she knows she's coming home.
eventually, yes.
And so she goes and hides her car.
I don't know if I'd say hide it. She parked it around the corner.
But why though? Does she normally park her car around the corner?
67. Just so you're aware, Doctor. This is the location of the home. The vehicle, based on GPS coordinates, when her mom got home, was parked approximately 1.7 miles away. You were not aware of that?
No, that's not consistent with what you told me.
So it's not consistent with what she told you, but the evidence has shown that the GPS in the car was parked 1.7 miles.
Well, you're showing me a map. I have no idea of the truth of what you just showed me.
Because you're relying on what Nicole Nachtman told you.
No, I'm happy to rely upon what you tell me as an officer of the court. If you tell me the car was parked 1.7 miles away, I said that's inconsistent with what you told me.
So then she stays at the home when his mother, who she's so deathly afraid of, is coming home, correct?
She stayed, yes.
And she parked her car away so that her mom would not see it and her mom would not know she was home,
Well,
correct?
I don't know who parked the car. I assume she parked the car.
Okay. Either way, the car got parked away so that her mom would not see that she was there, correct?
Yes.
So when her mother gets home, she jumps out the window
Yes.
apparently to escape at that time,
Yes.
all right? Or at that moment in time, she runs into her mother, correct?
Yes.
She still has the gun in her hand, correct?
Yes.
And we've already established that she knows how to shoot the gun. She knows what shooting the gun is. So she knows, again, when we go into Miriam Deans,
Mhm.
she knows what she was doing, shooting the gun when she eventually shot her mother, correct?
Again, I don't believe she knew what she was doing. She was in a psychotic state.
Doctor, I think you're expanding doing. Doing means the physical act of shooting the gun. Are you saying she
That's
did?
counsel's interpretation of the law. That's how the jury instruction says.
So, Doctor, it's your opinion then today, you're telling this jury that Nicole Nachtman did not know she was shooting the gun.
She did not.
Doctor, what do you think she thought she was doing? Blowing bubbles?
She wasn't blowing bubbles. I mean, that's a rather demeaning statement, don't you
Well,
think?
Doctor, you're
Counsel?
saying she doesn't know she was shooting a gun. What did she think she was doing at that moment?
She was in a state of panic. She was in a psychotic state. She was suicidal, and she had a gun in her hand.
But what
She can't even tell you what she was doing.
Okay. Well, Doctor, based on her actions, after she shot her mother, she ran, correct?
Yes,
She ran to her car, correct?
eventually, yes,
And then she left.
Yes.
Tallahassee, correct?
yes.
And so she very well knew that police were coming, did she not?
She had an idea at that point, after the fact, yes.
Because she knew she'd done something wrong,
She saw it.
and she knew the consequences of doing something wrong was that she was going to go to jail.
No, I don't think she knew that. She never said anything about going to jail. In fact, months later, she's still talking about being banished from the state or being on probation. She was
She was
afraid
gonna
that the
get in
police
trouble.
would come. I agree with that.
Doctor, do you, I know, you've seen some of the evidence in this case, correct?
Yes,
And you heard from, or seeing at least the transcript of her conversation with her brother.
Yes.
And in that
Oh,
transcript, she tells her brother, very first thing she says to him is, "I'm gonna miss you, Joey."
Yes.
You remember that?
Yes.
She also, when she goes and gets the
is
money
he
from
gonna
David
bring up
here,
the gun?
she gives him a big hug because she doesn't know when she's gonna see him again.
Yes.
And she also tells her best friend, "You've been a good friend."
Yes.
She knew it was wrong to kill her parents, correct?
I would say that there is evidence after the fact that could lead some people to conclude that. I don't have an opinion about, that's B prong, whether she knew it was wrong or not. I will acknowledge that she left the scene, she lied to people, she engaged in other behavior that suggests that she knew at that point that it was wrong. But you know as well as I do, what we need to focus on is the instant in which she killed her mother, the instant in which she killed her stepfather. What happens after may help us understand that, but it's certainly not dispositive.
Well, doctor, she also admitted to another psychiatrist or another doctor that she, in fact, knew it was wrong to kill her parents, didn't she?
Yeah, Dr. Lazarus said, "Did you know it was wrong?" And she said, "Yes."
You have a moment with it?
Did you not ask that question?
Dr. Ewing, you just stated that in fact, and I think we went over it earlier, but let's review the first sentence of this insanity instruction that is on your screen.
An issue in this case is whether Nicole Nachtman was insane when the crime allegedly was committed.
Is anywhere in this instruction, as far as you know, indicate that an individual's actions after the crime need to be considered?
No.
Does the fact that Nicole Nachtman parked her car, whether it was down the street or 1.7 miles away, change your opinion as to whether at the time she killed Robert Deans and Miriam Deans, she was suffering from a mental infirmity, disease, or defect, and that because of that condition, she did not know what she was doing or its consequences?
Doesn't change my opinion at all.
No, but it
Let's
would
first
change
start
your
with
opinion
Robert
that
Deans.
she was not
You mentioned on
prior
cross-examination
to,
Mr. Terry, when he
and it
asked you
might have some
about whether
premeditation
she knew she was shooting a gun,
attached to
and
it.
that meant it was going to kill somebody. What is going on in
And
the mind of
insanity
Nicole
is
Nachtman,
out the
based
fucking
on what
window.
she relayed to you, based on your review of the materials and what you know to be true about Nicole Nachtman? What was going through her mind at the time Robert Deans was killed?
She was confused, she was panicked, she was suicidal, she was ambivalent, she was in a state of psychosis in which she was not acting or thinking rationally. And as a result, she shot and killed this poor man.
I don't believe you.
Now, you had indicated, or you were asked on cross-examination about the police documents, and there is evidence to suggest that the scene may have been cleaned up after the killing of Robert Deans. Is that correct?
Yes.
Does that in any way change your opinion as to what she was thinking and what was in her mind at the time she pulled the trigger and killed Robert Deans?
No, I considered it. I gave it a lot of consideration because the normal thing to do if you know you've done something wrong is to try to flee or try to escape. She didn't. She stayed there. She left. She even came back. Whether she cleaned up or not, it doesn't matter to me.
What is the evidence as far as the records you reviewed, as far as Robert Dean's time of death and when Miriam Deans is shot, and how long Nicole Nachtman stayed in that home with a decomposing body?
A couple of days.
What is your opinion as to, at the time Miriam Deans arrives at the house and Nicole Nachtman jumps out her bedroom window and is confronted by Miss Deans in the driveway, what is your opinion as to what is going through the mind of Nicole Nachtman at the time she pulls the trigger and kills her mother?
She's still psychotic. She's confused, ambivalent, suicidal, fearful. She feared that her mother would kill her. At the same time, she was still pondering whether to kill herself.
Is part of your opinion as to schizophrenia and the delusional beliefs that Nicole Nachtman was experiencing, that in her mind, she really believed her mother was going to kill her at that moment?
She did, absolutely.
And the reason you characterize that as a delusion is because it's a fixed belief that nobody can shake from Nicole Nachtman, even as we speak in 2019.
That's right.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you, Dr. Ewing.
Thank you.
Doctor, you may step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
May he be excused by the defense?
Judge, if we could approach.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a short break. There are some things I have to discuss with the attorneys before we decide what we're going to do next. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a break. Please do not discuss the case amongst yourselves or anyone else. Please not do any research related to the case, and please avoid any exposure to the case outside of the courtroom. All rise for the jury. Jury has exited. Everyone may be seated. My intent was to do the college week with her. I don't know what she's going to decide.
Time for all of that, or
if you had another witness, then I was gonna keep them around and do it later. If you're not prepared, because part of my colleague with her, if she's had enough time.
She has that, there's something from the exchange. Judge, she's not prepared to talk.
All right, Ms. Nachtman, I need to ask you some questions, so if I can have you stand, I am gonna need to swear you in with these, questions at the under oath. If you'll raise your right hand, please, thank you. You swear the testimony you give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. All right, thank you. Put your hand down. Ma'am, this is, to verify with the attorney, there are no other possible witnesses at this time besides the possibility of her testifying, is that correct? All right, and so the next thing for the defense to do would be to rest if she doesn't testify, is that correct?
And when would you want us to do the proffer?
Which
Before
proffer?
we rest of Mr. Nachtman?
Oh,
When would you like us to do the proffer, before or after we rest? Just so
I don't think it matters. But I mean, if you have, if there's a legal reason to do it before you rest, I'm willing to do it before you rest.
There is a judge.
All right, then let's.
Then
do
why are
it.
you asking?
Because part of this is if I determine that, I just don't know yet, let me get through with her, because you all may be in position to rest, and then I send the jury to lunch. Ms. Nachtman, you have an absolute right to remain silent and not testify during this trial. If you do that, I will instruct the jury that you exercise a fundamental right in there not to hold that against you. In fact, that instruction has already been included in a preliminary instruction that they heard, but I am letting you know that it is also in a final instruction, that they are not to consider the fact that you did or you did not testify. The other side of that is that you have an absolute right to come down here to take this stand, to be sworn in front of the jury, and to testify in your case.
She's
That
not
is
going to
your
testify.
decision and your decision alone. Nobody should change your mind on that decision if that is what you want to do. Now, I do suggest that you discuss that decision with your attorneys and you take their advice into consideration. But I want you to understand
This
that
lady in her
decision
hair,
is
I
your
swear.
decision. Do you understand that?
Yes.
All right. Have you had sufficient time to discuss your decision, whether to testify or not testify in your case with your attorneys?
Yes.
Have you made a decision?
Yes.
What is your decision?
No.
You do not want to testify, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Has anyone forced you or threatened you in any way to get you to reach this decision not to testify?
No.
Are you under the influence of any drugs, alcohol, or medication that may affect your ability to reach this decision?
No.
All right. I'm going to accept that. Now, I will let you know that if for some reason you change your mind up until the point that the defense announces in front of the jury that they rest, you have that ability. I accept that you have expressed to me your decision and that you've reached that decision freely and voluntarily not to testify. But if for any reason you change your mind before the defense rests, I'm going to ask that you let your attorneys know, and I'll ask the attorneys to ask to approach, and we can do that. But at this point, thank you, Ms. Nachtman, you may be seated. I'm going to accept that colloquy as her decision and that it's been freely and voluntarily reached not to testify. So it sounds like
She would not make it on the stand.
all right. So what I'd like to do is bring them in, let you rest, and then send them to lunch. And then we can discuss, I'm sure there's gonna be some motions from the defense. We can discuss any other things. So how long should I give them?
Judge, I was just only going to suggest, if possible, the defense has given us their JOA case law now for the second JOA.
Right.
I have a preference, if possible, to do that now and attempt to do David later before they go to lunch. He is a very brief witness, and I think it would be helpful from both sides to ensure that after that, there is no rebuttal based on that. We already know the testimony of Dr. Lazaro, so that's not necessarily going to change, I don't think. But, I mean, he's a very brief witness.
Okay. I mean, it's only 11:30. I'm not against that. We've
And they
sent
just
them to
have
lunch.
not too long.
We've sent them to lunch at 12:30 before.
Judge, the judgment of acquittal argument as to self-defense is not gonna be on.
That's my thought.
So how about this then? How about if you officially rest now, and then I will allow you to ceremoniously rest in front of them so that we don't need to bring them back in, send them out, and do our legal argument. Is that all
That's
right?
fine, we're gonna go right into David Lear, understanding that I am not waiving my right to argue judgment of acquittal at the close of my case, we're just doing it for timing.
I don't think they do it now.
No, yeah, you
Oh,
go
judgment of
now.
acquittal now.
Go ahead and, but you need to rest.
I'm sorry, yes.
I will allow you to rest in front of the jury, but you're officially, legally resting now, and we go into your argument.
The defense rests at this time,
All right, thank you.
pursuant to the discussion we just had a minute ago.
Thank you, Ms. Holt. It's all right, I need to apologize.
Judge, I cited and provided the court in the state 3 cases.
Let me find them. Is that Jefferson versus State?
Steve would be the first, or Stay, Jefferson and Martin.
Right, so STIEH, Martin, and Jefferson. I got them.
Judge, the stay case is the second DCA case. It's 67 Southern Third 275. If you go to head note 7 on page 2, self-defense cases are intensely fact-specific, but where the evidence leaves room for 2 or more inferences of fact, at least one of which is consistent with the defendant's hypothesis of innocence, it is not legally sufficient to make a case for the jury. And Judge, I want to go back to the case that I cited earlier in the week.
Martin?
It's a different Martin, and so I want to put that side on there. I know it's confusing, but this
different
Martin I gave you
Martin?
is not that Martin.
Well, that Martin is the one that got you the ability to argue self-defense because of the delusions.
Correct. Let me get that one, I'm sorry. The
There's
reason I
another
want to
Martin?
bring that up is because I believe that those facts of self-defense and insanity are analogous to our case.
Well, the one I have is the one with the police who approached Mr.
That's the
Martin.
one.
Okay.
I just want to put the case side so it's not confusing, because we have 2 Martins.
At this point, I'm not aware of any other Martin than the one that it appears that we're talking about with the police officers.
So you have Martin in front of you that I gave you for self-defense. That's 2018 Florida App Lexus
The
6190.
hell was that?
Martin v. State that allowed insanity and self-defense is 110 Southern Third 936.
Oh,
So
she
that's
dropped her
why I
bone.
didn't want
Hold on.
to be confused.
All right.
The Martin that the court relied on in granting our self-defense instruction is 110 Southern Third 936. And as I argued earlier in the week, I believe the facts of this case are very, very similar, if not exact to ours, in the sense of the defense was asserting insanity and self-defense, and that this case stood for the proposition that if there was any evidence that tends in any way, even directly or indirectly, to establish a reasonable doubt of a defendant's guilt, that the instruction should be given. And what the court said in this case is that insanity and self-defense are not inconsistent defenses, and that particularly in this case, because the appellant, due to his mental illness and due to the fact that he was delirious or possibly insane, that he believed that in this case, police officers were going to kill him. Therefore, it was appropriate to instruct the jury on self-defense. I bring that up because I believe that those facts in the court granting the self-defense instruction and indicating that insanity and self-defense can both be argued, that applies to our case. With regard to the motion for judgment of acquittal, when you go back to stay, which is STIEH for the record, 67 Southern Third 275, you go on to page 3, that indicates the facts that were presented with regard to the stature of the victim in this case. The defendant was 5 feet 5, 130 pounds. The victim was 5 feet 7, 160 pounds. It was uncontested that the victim was demanding, and aggressive during the encounter. The defense presented testimony of several witnesses to testify to the victim's demeanor in this case. The victim was screaming that he was going to kill both the defendant and a witness who testified. And in that case, the court, on page 4 of the opinion, indicated that the denial of a motion for judgment of acquittal is under a de novo standard, although the question of whether a defendant acted in justifiable self-defense is generally a question for the jury. When the defense presents a prima facie case of self-defense, the state has the burden to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant did not act in self-defense. However, if the state fails to sustain this burden of proof, the trial court is duty-bound to grant a judgment of acquittal in favor of the defendant. And so now that we
That's
have
not even your
elicited
case,
testimony
bro.
on both insanity, Nicole Nachtman's state of mind at the time she shot, more specifically her mother, but also her state of mind as it relates to Bob, the fact that we presented now abuse history, an opinion on battered child syndrome, the facts, as I argued earlier this week for the self-defense instruction, we have Dr. Krastowski testifying to the close range firing when Miriam Deans is shot. We have testimony with regard to Miriam Deans' height and weight at autopsy, that this in fact was close range, and even the 2 gunshots that were not close range, all Dr. Krastowski could say is that it's possibly that the shooter was, or the muzzle of the gun was more than 2 feet away from Ms. Deans when she was shot. Based on the totality of everything the court's heard at this point, our mental health evidence, evidence of battered child syndrome, the encounter, the jumping out the bedroom window, and encountering her mother in the driveway, we're asking the court to grant our judgment of acquittal on self-defense as it relates to Miriam Deans.
Do you have any other judgment of acquittal arguments at this time?
No.
All right. State,
Yes, it's just.
I'll renew my
Right.
argument as to premeditation from the first judgment of acquittal, because
in order to preserve it,
all of
absolutely.
that still applies, but this is just additional now that we've rested.
As to the second count only regarding Miriam Deans, the state would ask you to deny the motion for judgment of acquittal at this time. The Martin case that Ms. Hersey has provided, the first Martin case from the first district from 2013, the state would point out that that deals with the trial court failing to give the self-defense instruction. That doesn't have any holding in it as to an improper denial of a motion for judgment of acquittal. It specifically deals with that should have been given. So that's distinguishable as to this issue. As to Ms. Hersey's argument that they presented a prima facie case of self-defense, the state would disagree with that. Their own doctors have said that the defendant had absolutely no reasonable basis to believe that her mother was going to kill her. Rather, it was purely a delusion. So while I agree they presented evidence as to insanity, that is a question for the jury, and it's not a reasonable belief as to self-defense. The three cases that she has presented, Jefferson, Martin, and Stay, regarding self-defense are all essentially stand your ground type cases where there was extreme evidence that the victim had previously threatened the defendant, the victim had charged into his house, the victim had a knife, victim was very angry. There's a lot of evidence in those cases.
None of them are based on delusion.
Correct, Judge. So based on that, they're very distinguishable from our facts, and this is a case that should go to the jury. The factual circumstances here, we would ask them to deny them.
Anything else from the defense?
No, sir.
I'm going to deny the motion. So what we're going to do from a timing perspective is bring them in, allow you to rest. The state is requesting rebuttal evidence. Do you have any objection to the rebuttal witnesses?
Judge, our objection is not to Dr. Lazaro.
Right.
However, our objection to Mr. Lear and the one photograph we lodged an objection to, a photograph of Ms. Nachtman with her cousin David in high school. An abused child, what her relationship was like with her mother, or any of the issues that we've heard in this case. Our objection as to that one photograph is relevant.
All right, I'm going to overrule that objection as relevant to the testimony from him that she changed at some point, and that point includes the time frame that the picture seems to address. So I'm going to overrule the relevance objection. So other than that, the state is absolutely entitled to present a rebuttal case, particularly the Dr. Lazaro, who is present. But I don't think we're not going to get to her before lunch. It sounds like from a timing perspective, it's 11:45. I'm going to bring them in. I'm going to allow you to ceremoniously rest in front of them. Then I'll turn to the state and ask if they have a rebuttal case and ask you to call your first witness. We'll get that witness on and off, and I'll send them to lunch. Let me just see. So if we get them to lunch at 12 and I give them an hour and we come back at 1, I suppose that there's a chance we can get the closing arguments today. Let's
It can be an hour from now.
What's that? No, an hour from whenever we finish with their first rebuttal witness.
Oh, okay.
So we get them, if I release them at 12,
Yes.
tell them to come back at 1. And we get Dr. Lazaro on the stand at 1.
Stop talking, Judge.
Thank you, Nicole. Let's bring it, stay ready?
Yes, Judge.
Defense ready?
Yes.
Let's bring in the jury.
I'll stop talking.
Yeah.
That'd be
And let me
appreciated.
just say, I said that I'm opposed to sending them out at or after 5 because I'm concerned about them and then being here a long time. I have no objection to asking them what we've done that before too. So
Judge,
even
what
if
I would propose is closings if we can,
Right.
time-wise, and not instructing them until first thing in the morning and then sending them back. I think the law is
Okay.
important. And so instructing them on not to formulate opinions and all that before they
but
leave.
bring them in the morning, read them
If we
the.
get there time-wise, that would be my preference.
Okay, well, and it seems like the state's agreeing, and I have always said, when the two parties agree, who am I to stand in the way of progress? That sounds like a good plan for me.
Ready, Judge?
Yes, we are.
All right, jury entering.
The jury is present and seated. Everyone else may be seated at this time. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, welcome back. Did anyone discuss the case, do any research related to the case, or was anyone exposed to any reports about the case during the most recent break? By show of hands. No hands, thank you very much. I'm now going to ask the defense if they are ready to proceed.
The defense rested this time, Your Honor.
All right, defense having rested, we now turn to the state to see if they have a rebuttal case.
Mr. David Lear.
All right, your first witness in the rebuttal case is David Lear. Mr. Lear, welcome back, sir. If you'll come forward, I will swear you in again. Wherever you're comfortable, if you'll face me and raise your right hand, thank you. Do you swear any testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, thank you. If you'll come on back down to the witness stand, please watch your
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead and have a seat in the chair, make yourself comfortable.
Good morning, Mr. Lear.
Hi.
Mr. Lear, you provided the state some photographs that you had in this case, did you not?
Yes, I did.
I'm going to show you what are marked as State's Exhibit 73A and D. You recognize those two photos?
Oh, yes, I do.
And what are the photos of?
One is a convention in Orlando back in 2012. Me and my family and Nicole with the actor from The Walking Dead. The second
Oh.
is 3 photos of
What
my
actor?
aunt and my cousins and Nicole in Texas.
Right, do those pictures fairly depict those circumstances that you just described?
Yes.
So move that State's Exhibit 73A be admitted.
Other than what was discussed, any objections at the time?
Not other than what was already.
They'll be okay.
Right. Move publish them.
You may publish.
What actor?
In the picture at the top, Who are the people in that picture? That's, I assume Nicole Nachtman?
Yeah,
That's
Nicole
Nicole.
Nachtman is the girl with the white shirt. Her older brother, Joseph Carey, with no shirt on. Her older brother, Kevin Carey, with
Aw.
the red shirt on, with the pets.
In the picture below that?
And the kitty
who are those
cats.
people?
That is Nicole as the baby. Her mother, Miriam.
In the picture below that.
Also Miriam and Nicole.
And then in 73B,
Oh, it's
we
the.
have, who we have.
I forget what his
It's at a
name is.
convention in Orlando.
What was the convention?
What was the convention?
Yeah, do you recall?
It was like a horror convention or Comic Con convention.
Comic-Con.
Yeah.
And who do you see in this picture?
I'm in the picture with a hat on, with the long hair. That's my oldest son, 21 years old. His name is Justin Lair. The boy with the red shirt on is my son, Benjamin Lair. The infant baby is my son, Kevin Lair. Nicole Nachtman with the Freddy Krueger outfit on, and one of the actors from Walking Dead.
Okay. And how old was
His
Nicole
name
Nachtman in
was
this picture? Do
Ty
you recall?
in the show.
2012. I guess that would make her about 17 or 18. 19.
I don't
And do you
remember.
recall what year in school she was at that point?
I think high school. Yeah, senior high school.
Did she need to get permission from her mom to come to this? Do you recall?
Objection to speculation?
She did.
I'm gonna sustain.
How did she get to go to the convention?
She
Objection based on hearsay?
Approach.
Did she?
She had to ask permission. How does he know? Because she always had to ask permission. She had to ask permission to go to the mall, for Christ's sake. Why would she not have to ask permission?
And did she write a review to the convention?
yes, she did.
No further questions, please.
Any cross-examination?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Mr. Lear.
Hi, good morning.
State's Exhibit 73A. How old's Nicole in the second photograph in the middle and the bottom photograph?
She is about a year old or just over a year old.
And that would have been when they lived in Texas?
Yes,
And you weren't in Texas with them for these pictures, correct?
not for the picture, no.
And then how old do you think Nicole is in photograph 1 where she's with Joey and Kevin?
About 2.5 to 3 years old.
Okay. So nothing over 2.5 or 3 years old as far as these 3 pictures. Everything is about that toddler age, 1, 2, or 3.
Yes, ma'am.
State's Exhibit 73B, just for the jury's benefit, Comic-Con, is that like a convention where people go dressed in costume?
Yes.
I don't have any other questions.
Any redirect?
No, yeah.
May this witness be excused? And by the defense? Excused?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Leary, you may step down. You may be excused as a witness at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, if I can have you stand right there, I'm gonna go ahead and dismiss the jury for lunch. Ladies and gentlemen, it is almost 12 o'clock. It's 7 minutes till 12. I'm gonna give you then a little bit over an hour. I'm asking you to come back at 1 o'clock. Please do not discuss the case amongst yourselves or with anyone else. Please do not do any research related to the case, and please avoid any reports of the case outside of the courtroom. All rise for the jury.
All right.
Jury has exited. Everyone may be seated, and you may step down, Mr. Leary.
Judge, for the record purposes, I'm gonna introduce those video evaluations that the court does not allow in as a court exhibit 4 that will not go back to the jury.
These are the video evaluations conducted by Dr. Lazaro.
Lazaro, yes. Just a- It's very brief of Ronald Nachtman. He wants to sit in the courtroom for the rest of the trial, but I just rather get that done. And it's brief about
Any-
the abuse related
problem?
to.
No, I agree, I'd like to do it now.
Absolutely.
to eliminate that.
Absolutely. Let's get him in. And then he can be released, and then he can sit in the courtroom.
Yes. And Judge, so the record's clear, we wanted to ask Mr. Nachtman about abuse that Nicole Nachtman suffered when she was an infant, when he was holding her and Miriam Deans was violent. The court excluded that in the testimony, I believe, based on the argument by the state that she's a baby. It's obviously not going to affect her. And now we've had expert testimony, or that, in fact, that tumultuous time in her life was crucial. So for the record purposes, I just want to proffer what he would have said
Right.
about those tender years.
He's welcome. Mr. Nachtman, welcome back. You come on down to the witness stand. They're going to conduct a proffer outside the presence of the jury, so I'm going to have to swear you in. You can come on down. Yes, sir. Thank you. If you'll raise your right hand, please. Thank you. Do you swear any testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God? Yes, sir. All right, you come on down. And also, we're doing it now so that then you can remain in the courtroom. You can be released and remain in the courtroom from this point forward. Thank you
I
very
know,
much, sir.
he's weird.
Mr. Nachtman, tell us your name.
Ronald Gene Nachtman.
And you already testified in this trial. You're Nicole's father, correct? Biological father.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to ask you some questions that we were not able to ask you earlier this week in front of the jury, just for the record.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell me, at what point Miriam Dean started to become violent with you?
It was August 7th of 1993. It was a weekend that the boys weren't there. They had arrived on August 1st.
Was Nicole born yet?
No, ma'am.
Was Miriam pregnant with Nicole at the time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Please just relay instances of where Miriam Deans would have either become physically abusive towards you or violent to you, and describe those instances.
On August 7th, it was Saturday. She said, let's go play some golf. And I said, well, let's go this afternoon. And she said, well, I'm going to get some golf in early this morning. I said, okay, I get some breakfast. I went to the kitchen, and she started screaming, I'm tired of your abuse. And she picked up a suitcase. I just got back from a business meeting. It was left near a box that she had left for a month. And she started screaming, I'm tired of your abuse. And I said, well, we're not going to play golf? She said, no. So I walked over from the kitchen into the dining room, which is dining and living room area. And she was at the front door screaming, I'm tired of your abuse. And she was throwing my clothes out the front door.
Had you in any way been violent or hit or struck Miriam Deans at this point?
No, man, there was really no problems at that.
So tell me what physically she did to you in terms of touching you or hitting you.
Well, I said, why are you doing this? And she turned around at the front door, throwing the clothes out, and she came towards me, and she got me on the neck, and she started suffocating me.
You have your hands holding your neck.
I had her hands, both hands on my neck, and she was suffocating me.
And at the time of this incident in 1993, Miriam was how far along pregnant with Nicole?
She was about 4 months, ma'am.
Are there any other instances where Miriam Deans was either violent or abusive towards you?
Yes, ma'am, on September 5th.
Of that same year?
Yes, yeah. We had about 17 of these. We were sitting there by the
About 17 of
love
these.
seat, double love seat. She had a big brass newspaper rack, and she said, hand me the TV section. I said, it's right there. She stood up. She said, I'm tired of your abuse, she screamed. I'm tired of your abuse. And she picked up a newspaper rack, and she rammed it on my right arm, but it moved back to the thing, the seat, and then she started ripping the newspaper up. I'm tired of your abuse. And I just left.
And she was pregnant, 5 months or so pregnant with Nicole at that point?
That was September 5th, ma'am, yes.
What other instances where Miriam Deans became violent, either in Nicole's presence or while she was pregnant with Nicole?
Well, on the 15th
Of what month?
of September
Of what year?
1993,
Okay.
this was the last one. This was the last one. The night before, she said, I'm gonna put some laundry in the washing machine in the dryer.
Just tell me what happened without telling me what year.
Well, at the front door, she accosted me and said, you took the laundry in the wash? And I said, no. And she started shoving me. I walked to the back of the house, and I said, she kept screaming, you abused me. You abused me. I said, well, maybe one of your boys took the laundry out. And right then she started punching me in the face. She got me one time in the face, my head went back, and she punched me again in the face, and my head went back. And I was holding my head. I said, why are you doing this? And then she started grabbing my nipples and trying to yank my nipples out. And I got out of there.
Were there instances where after Nicole was born, where you would be holding Nicole and Miriam Deans would become violent with you?
Yes, ma'am. They
Tell me
started
about those.
in May. She agreed I could take Nicole back right
Hold on
before.
a second, Ronald.
Yes.
Mr. Nachtman, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
How old was Nicole during this incident?
And you want to tell me this man doesn't have some sort of diagnosis of some kind? He's going to tell you he's used these before. That's why he knows exact dates. But he's going to say, you abused me, you abused me. So all of these fights were unprovoked. She just did all of these things unprovoked. I don't believe not a thing that this man says. It's a good thing the jury is not here to see this. They would look at him and be like, what the fuck?
The first instance, she was 3 months old.
3 months old. And what were you doing? What did Miriam Deans do to you as you were holding Nicole?
She started shoving me and Nicole against the wall violently.
Did you receive any injury? Did Nicole receive any injury?
No, I just told her to stop it. She left.
What other instances in front of Nicole or after Nicole was born where Miriam was violent with you?
And then in May, she did the same thing. I took Nicole home for a week to Cincinnati. She came over again right before the trip and started violently shoving Nicole and I against the wall. And then the third was on October 16th. Now, on September 11th, she asked me to bring Nicole over to work. And it was a Sunday, whatever, she wasn't at work. So I took Nicole every day with our baby charger to the park.
Just tell me what happened between you and Ms. Dean. Mr.
She
Nachtman.
drove the car up. She ran out of the car screaming, "You're denying me my baby." I'm holding Nicole, and she starts punching me in the head by the orbit here. She punched me 3 times. She knocked me and Nicole to the ground.
Were there any other instances where Miriam Dean was violent with you or abusive towards you after Nicole Nachtman's birth?
So we had incidences in November 11th.
What
Yeah,
is the
December
point of this,
6th.
though?
And how old would Nicole have been during that time?
Well, September 11th, she was about 8 months when I was holding Nicole and she fractured my skull.
Okay.
So October, she would have been 9 months old. We
Any
had,
other instances you can think of as you sit here today after Nicole's birth where Miriam was either abusive or physical?
well, up to the time where I had her living with me every day. She was coming over to the apartment. That's when she was physically abusive. On November 11th, she picked her up for the day to Clear Lake. She called me to come down and get her. She grabbed me in the apartment and started kicking me. And she was screaming that I was abusing her. And then Joey called the police. And
So the police were called in certain instances of turmoil between you and Miriam after Nicole was born.
I wasn't in turmoil. She just told me to come down and get Nicole.
My question was, were police called during any of these instances after Nicole was born or while Miriam was pregnant with Nicole?
Yeah.
How many times do you think police were called?
I kept track. I was leading. We had like 29 instances at 12 at my place and 17 at her place. Where at her place 17 times Joey called the police. She would get me into the apartment. And
How old was Nicole during the last incident of abuse or violence between you and Miriam?
she said she'd pick her up on Monday.
How old was Nicole for the last?
2 years and I think 10 months. It was October 6th.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you, Mr. Nachtman.
Any cross-examination?
No, sir, not for the proper, no, sir.
All right, thank you very much, sir. You may step
Good
down.
Lord.
He can remain in the courtroom for the rest of the trial, Judge.
I believe so. Is there any objection from the state?
No, sir, not as long as the court's prior ruling hasn't changed and, he's.
Well, I was gonna ask, go ahead, sir. You'll step out. You can step down. Go ahead and step outside.
You want me to leave the courtroom?
Just briefly, we're gonna go to lunch in a minute anyway. The
Okay.
issue we're gonna discuss is whether you can remain in the courtroom for the rest of the proceeding, which I believe you're going to. But if you'll step outside at this time briefly, and then we're gonna break for lunch.
Okay.
We'll let you know, Ronald.
I just wanted to ask the state if you've changed your mind as to let him testify.
No, sir, we have not changed our mind, and I will put on the record that I listened closely to the doctor's testimony, and I don't believe that the defense doctors clearly said that based on activity that occurred when Nicole was in the room, that while I agree that they said very young, as a very young child, that she lived in a tumultuous household, and, that there was conflict between parties, I agree.
And they've
with
heard testimony.
Right,
that.
I agree that all that came out, and I agree that he testified to that, he actually, over our objection, said to the jury that she beat him repeatedly in the head. So that's come out, but I don't.
Well, what about that's, okay, we gotta separate it though.
Yeah.
There's the one where she was pregnant, the August, I think, dates that he mentioned, 7th and September 5th dates perhaps. But he did testify to some incidents where he was holding her.
Right, no, I totally am aware of that, Judge, and the state's position is the same. I don't think that based on the defense expert's testimony, I think that, again, they said in general that they did consider overall tumultuous childhood and all of that sort of thing, but I think that his specific statements that Miriam Deans beat him or hit him when he was holding the child, the prejudicial effect of that far outweighs the probative value, which is that she had a tumultuous childhood, which has been testified to. So no, our position is exactly the same. I don't believe that he should be permitted to testify to that.
Let me just verify with the defense, you still want the ability to call him?
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna maintain my prior ruling, based on the state's argument and my recollection of the expert's testimony. So, you've got your proffer on the record for appellate purposes.
Thank you, Judge.
He's been released as a witness. He can absolutely remain in the courtroom for the rest of the proceedings. The rest of the proceedings are gonna be the state's doctor when we come back. I told the jury. 1 o'clock
Let
is
the
what was
defense
announced.
call
That
him.
gives, the attorneys and court personnel at least 45 minutes or so for a lunch break.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, let the defense call him and let him sit up there and look ridiculous. That's only gonna hurt you all.
I trust you, boss. You want him to go eat, or you want him to hang out, or you want to talk to him about anything? We're gonna dispose of the habit.
She does look really sad.
Either bring the eater, you don't eat anytime before that.
And that sucks.
One of them.
Now we get to listen to
How are
the
you?
state's
Welcome.
doctor. Woot, woot.
All right, I think that we are at The state's next, final, last witness, Dr. Lazaro. Doctor, let me ask just to get it right, because I've heard it pronounced different ways. Is it Lazaro or Lazaro?
It's Lazaro.
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 I apologize for any mispronunciations of it that I've made.
Everybody loves me.
All right. I think though we're ready as soon as the jury hears, right? Is the state ready?
Yes, sir.
And defense ready?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, we're just waiting for the jury. And just to verify, the plan is still, once this witness is done, we are going to go into closing arguments, and we are going to bring them back in the morning and instruct them and allow them to begin deliberations.
That's the plan.
That's a plan, Judge. I'm not sure if you realize that Ms. Holt was doing the cross, so that's like plans.
Might be, Ms. Holt, how long is your cross? You've been fairly good on your estimates of time. I'm not saying that your cross will be a long time, but just rough estimate of your time.
I guess between an hour and a half.
Jeez.
But of course.
All right, well, we'll see if we need to reevaluate closings, because again, I don't know if I want to start closings at 4 o'clock if you all have asked for 3 hours. That's probably not going to happen. All right.
I don't necessarily mind the rec will be much more than an hour, about an hour, so versus an hour is a possibility to get to the
Yeah.
I want the court to be aware of that.
Well, the goal is the target is anywhere close to 2 o'clock. 2:30 even. Because if we do 3 hours of closing, each time an hour and a half. But if we get past 2:30, then that's where we're going to have to reevaluate. I'm not going to call it right now, but if we get past 2:30, we're going to need to have a talk.
You're willing to ask the jurors.
That's true. That's true.
That's true.
No, that's
True
true. Yeah, no,
beans.
absolutely.
Can we
As far
move
as
along?
That's taking that same plan, doing closings and then sending them home.
Right.
Yeah.
But I still think we need to inquire that one juror whether they've been able to change their vacation plans. Or...
I agree. My plan was to do it after the next witness, before we do closings. Jury's present and seated. Everyone else may be seated at this time. Ladies and gentlemen, jury, welcome back. I hope everybody had a nice lunch. But I have to ask, did anyone discuss the case with anyone else or amongst yourselves? Did anyone do any research related to the case, or was anyone exposed to any reports of the case outside of the courtroom by show of hands? Let the record reflect no show of hands. Again, thank you all very much. We are going to pick up where we left off, and I'm going to ask the state to call their next rebuttal witness.
Still call Dr. Emily Lazaro.
Dr. Lazaro, if you'll come forward, please. Wherever you're comfortable, if you'll face me to be sworn. Thank you, doctor. Do you swear affirm any testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
And
No.
You'll follow the bailiff around. I know you have some stuff, and you're welcome. Please watch your step. You're welcome to unpack anything you need, get situated. That microphone does adjust, and then when you're ready, you let me know, and I'm going to allow you to
Microphone is
ask.
fully adjustable. Okay, well, she has given her resume. I know it's called something else. I don't know what it is. Why are we zooming in on the gloves? It's weird. I'll be right back. No, wrong button, Jessica.
Good afternoon, Doctor.
Good afternoon.
If you could please tell the jury your name, spell your last name for the court reporter.
Emily E. Lazaro, MD. My last name is spelled L-A-Z as in zebra, A-R-O-U.
And Doctor, what do you do for a living?
I'm a general and forensic psychiatrist.
And what does that mean, a general forensic psychiatrist?
Well, I'm a physician. I'm a psychiatrist. I treat patients, and I do general adult psychiatry where I treat adolescents up through elderly people. And then I also do forensic psychiatry, which is sort of what we're doing here today, where I evaluate cases and talk with the jury and teach you guys about these cases from a psychiatric standpoint.
How long have you been a practicing psychiatrist?
Since 2008.
Tell about your education when you become a practicing psychiatrist.
I got my undergrad degree from Baylor University in Waco, Texas, and then I went on to do my master's at Texas A&M, and then I went on to do my medical school at the University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio, Texas. Then I came here to do my residency in psychiatry at USF here in Tampa. In the fourth year of my residency, I was the chief resident over all the psychiatrists, and then I was the first fellow to begin the University of South Florida Department of Psychiatry's forensic psychiatry program, where I graduated from that fellowship.
Where are you licensed to practice medicine?
In Texas, Mississippi, and here.
And do you belong to any professional memberships?
Yes, I'm a member of the Florida Medical Association and the American Academy of Psychiatry and the Law.
Aside from your current medical practice, what else have you done in your career?
Well, I've had the opportunity to do multiple different things. One of the things I did for quite a while is I've worked in the Department of Corrections. I was a forensic psychiatrist, in the psychiatric prison. I've worked on death row. I've worked in multiple different jails where I was the chief psychiatrist there. I've run a forensic unit in a psychiatric hospital for people that were awaiting trial either for sanity issues or competency issues. And I also ran a not guilty by reason of insanity clinic in San Antonio, Texas, where I treated patients not guilty by reason of insanity in the outpatient setting.
Have you published any papers?
Yes,
And have you given lectures or presentations in the field of psychiatry?
yes,
Have you testified in court as an expert in forensic psychiatry?
yes.
Approximately how many times did you say this?
About 80, a little over 80 times.
And about approximately how many of those times involved issues of insanity?
I don't know, probably a quarter of them, maybe more.
Judge, at this time, I'll turn it over to questions.
I have no questions at this time.
All right, you may proceed.
Now, were you retained by the state of Florida to undergo a forensic examination of Nicole Nachtman?
To perform one, yes.
Prior to meeting with Nicole Nachtman, what sort of material were you provided before meeting with things?
She has a
I
full
got multiple
resume.
medical records. I went through all the jail medical records from Nicole's admission there to 2018, deposition of her brother Joseph Carey, deposition of George Lair, deposition of Eric Lair, deposition of Hunter Lair, deposition of David Lair. Then there was a transcript of proceedings. There was a hearing regarding the battered child syndrome, the multi-part police interview with Nicole. I also did some of my own research in terms of watching The Snow Queen and Frozen.
One second. Just one question. All right, sorry to interrupt you, Doctor. Go
That's
ahead.
okay.
The rest of the material that you were reviewing.
Correct. The transcript from Florida State University for Nicole Nachtman. There was a mitigation packet that
She
was
watched
provided that
Frozen?
included the report by Dr. Heidi, school and testing records for Nicole Nachtman from Florida Air Academy.
Nobody else said they watched
Defendant's
Frozen.
notice to and for intent to rely upon the defense of insanity. Several visitation videos between Nicole and her brother Kenny, and also her father. It was 5 total calls there. CDs of photos from the crime scene, which included a video of the dorm room, vehicle pictures and pictures of the crime scene, pictures of Nicole's clothing, as well as personal items from her purse, video interview of Nicole by law enforcement, autopsy photos for Robert Deans and Miriam Deans, the state of Florida Department of Children and Family reports, a stack of papers entitled a family file. That was over 100 pages. The police reports on this case, which is almost 1,000 pages. Another stack of records that appear to be related to the custody issues, a deposition of Jacqueline Roman, a deposition of Taylor, deposition of Jeffrey Hartman, law enforcement crime scene diagram, telephonic interview with Miriam Lear, an interview also with Joseph Lear, Joseph Carey, deposition of Dr. Ewing, and also a deposition of Angelica Hessemer.
Now, going back to those jail records that you described, I think that's one of the first things you mentioned on your list.
Yes,
After reviewing the jail records in this case, was there ever any diagnosis of any psychotic illness at this time?
no,
Is she being treated for any psychotic illness?
no,
Is she currently taking any medication for any sort of psychotic illness?
no,
All right. Besides reviewing all that material, did you also meet with the defendant in this case?
yes.
And how many times did you meet with the defendant?
I met with her 3 separate times.
And what would be about the total number of hours you spent with her?
According to Attorney Hersey, it's about 14 hours, so I didn't calculate it myself.
Doctor, I'd like to start with the battered child syndrome issue in this case.
Yes,
Dr. Lazare, do you feel that Nicole Nachtman meets the standard for battered child syndrome?
no,
Now, first of all, Ms. Nachtman is not currently a child, correct?
correct,
She was not a child, I guess, at the time she committed or this occurred.
correct.
And what is her age now?
She's 25.
Now, does that factor into your opinion on this issue?
No, it didn't.
Dr. Heidi used a personality development scale. Are you aware of that?
I'm aware of it only because of Dr. Heidi.
So is that a scale that's widely used in the field of diagnosing patients?
Objection, unless he lays a better predicate than that.
Have you ever used such a scale?
No,
Right? Is it taught in schools? Have you ever seen it taught in schools?
no,
Have you ever read about it in any magazines or anything, any circular, anything in the psychiatric field?
well, hopefully I would have read about it in more than a magazine, but I did look at it because Dr. Heidi was on another case that I was involved in at one time, and I did read about it extensively because of that. Found out that essentially Dr. Heidi was trained by the person that actually designed it. And it was many years ago. I believe Dr. Heidi said it was about 40 years ago when she underwent her training. So that was 40 years ago. But as far as our clinical practice and somebody that's a psychiatrist in medical school and any of our training and residency, there is no training on that. I've never heard of it before Dr. Heidi.
Wow.
Now, let's start up first with the physical abuse aspect of the battered child syndrome.
Okay.
Tell the jury, if you would, whether or not you feel like she met a battered child syndrome because of physical abuse that she was in her life.
Well, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about battered child. I know Dr. Ewing brought it up as it relates to radiographic evidence because, as he said, that it was first sort of, that terminology was first sort of seen because there was radiographic evidence of children being battered based on looking at their bones. But the actual battered child syndrome, as I'm seeing it, as far as psychiatric terminology is concerned, came from what's called the battered woman syndrome, was actually a terminology described by a psychologist named Lenore Walker in about the 1970s. And essentially what that is that she's characterizing what I believe to be PTSD. And now actually Lenore Walker has said that this is also a form of
Objection to
PTSD.
say it this time.
Well, I'll caution the witness not to tell us what somebody else said.
Okay.
Rephrase the question.
In my opinion,
Go ahead, Dr. You can finish explaining about battered child syndrome.
battered woman syndrome is PTSD. It's just named this for legal purposes. But the battered woman syndrome, which would be contiguous with the battered child syndrome, describes a cycle of abuse where someone is abused and actively battered. Then the abuser goes through sort of an act of contrition and tries to sort of get in the good graces of the person that they battered. Then there's a tension building phase there, and then another battering. It has really nothing to do with any kind of inciting event. There doesn't have to be anything for the person to be battered. It just the person's existence makes them a victim to be battered by a batterer. So when we're looking at that, and when I'm looking at that, that's what I'm looking at. And when I'm looking at physical battering of someone, I'm looking at battering that is not in response to anything, as you had said yesterday, Attorney Terry, in relation to.
I'm going to object to the answers, Judge, as to what Mr. Terry said yesterday. It's for the jury to remember what people were saying in the courtroom, not for her to reiterate and testify on.
Well, I'll just like the witness not to make reference to what Mr. Terry may have said.
Okay, so the legal definition that was discussed yesterday was that there was, in terms of discipline, that's a different thing. Physical abuse and discipline are two different things. Discipline implies that there was something wrong done that had then physical discipline was used in order to correct a behavior. Whereas physical abuse is just abuse that's happening to somebody regardless of anything. And that's sort of a distinction that I make when I look at these cases. In this particular instance, and why I didn't characterize this physical battering as that, was because each one of the instances that I discussed with Nicole, which there were 3 primary that you guys have heard about, the 3rd grade one, the 10th grade one, and the 11th grade one. Each of them had an inciting event, and then there was something occurred from that. Then I look at the sequela of that in terms of physical. And as was brought up earlier in terms of radiographic evidence, if there was some physical evidence of a battering. And in none of these cases was that described to me. There was no evidence of that. No one else on the outside could see it. Not to say that every child that's been abused has physical evidence of that abuse. But that's one of the things that you look at. Was there any bruises? Did you have to receive any medical attention or anything in relation to those instances? And in none of those instances was that the case. So that's what I was looking at when I was looking at this case.
And other than those 3 moments, the 3rd grade, 10th grade, and 11th grade that you were discussing earlier, did you mention any other abuse, physical abuse in your life?
No.
Did when we're talking about battered child syndrome, are we talking about a situation in which a child is continuously abused on a regular basis?
I would say that when I look at battered children, it is a very regular occurrence. It is, I wouldn't say continuous because they live their lives and battered children go to school and everything like everybody else does, but it's very consistent and regular, I would say. So it would be occurring more than 3 times in 20 years. It'd be occurring on a regular basis, several times a week. And it just it has no rhyme or reason. There's no reason why the child can define to me that they have been abused. Now, there's sometimes where something they did wrong and then but the abuse extends way beyond discipline. And that's, again, one of the things I didn't see here.
And Dr. Heidi described it as limited physical abuse. Do you agree with that?
Yes, in her report.
And other than those 3 instances, those were advised to you by Ms. Nachtman, correct?
Yes.
And did you ever receive, were there any police reports or any subsequent documentation or witnesses who described or observed any abuse to Nicole Nachtman?
No.
And in each of those three events, you said there was something that precipitated, was it sort of a disciplinary type issue or an issue with, what was it that would precipitate it?
In the third grade, there was an issue, in Nicole's mom was a nurse, and this apparently was an issue with science, that Nicole was having a hard time with science. And I guess her mom was trying to describe a concept, and I asked Nicole what that concept was. She couldn't remember. But when her mom was teaching it to her and then asking her questions, regardless of how many times her mom would teach her a concept, she wasn't getting it. And it was frustrating her mother. And I think that that's what precipitated this. It wasn't anything that Nicole necessarily did that was wrong, but it was precipitated because she wasn't receiving the information and she wasn't giving it back. And I believe that she was probably doing poorly and her mom was trying to help her and it wasn't getting through. And her mother didn't understand, based upon, I guess, what she knew about her cognitive function, why it wasn't. But when she was getting escalated, it was making Nicole more nervous, which was only making her forget more. And then that just precipitated her mom's aggression toward her, frustration toward her, and she manifested in a physical way.
And in both the 10th grade and the 11th grade instances she described, but again, was there a precipitating event to those that caused the violence?
I'm trying to remember back now. The one she didn't tell me about, the one where she got kicked because she was walking like a boy.
Yes.
She didn't tell me about that. I had read that from other people, so that wasn't told to me. But the other instance was a time when I guess her mom noticed her handwriting. So Nicole was sitting at the dinner table or a table and she was writing, and her mom said that she had bad handwriting and pushed her head onto the table like that.
Okay. And other than those three instances, she did not describe any other physical abuse to you that you recall?
No.
Doctor, how would you describe Ms. Dean's parenting?
I believe she was a strict parent in some ways, in the sense that she had high expectations for her children, and she was pursuing excellence with them.
Do you believe that
Well,
Ms.
that's
Dean?
one way to say it.
Yeah, I don't have any doubt about that.
Do you believe that some of Ms. Dean's parenting skills and mindset might have come from where she came from, where she grew up, how she grew up, and how she was married?
Yes, I mean, I that's why I wanted to speak with her mother, and I discussed some of these with her mother, and sort of household with all. Her dad was, and her mom was strict also. She wanted Miriam to be independent, and she sort of pushed her. It was not described to me to be negative in any way, but that was how it was described to me. And so it was sort of consistent with that. And I also spoke with her son about some of the style that she did to him. And it was the consistent thing, that she was expecting excellence, but that she would be guiding. He described it to me as a guiding, that she would sort of go through stories with him of experiences that she has had in an attempt to help him. I think she had a crude style of speaking. Again, she was raised in a household with all boys. She was in the military. She used bad language. Joe told me that also. And so I don't agree with that. But as you know, you cannot, as a psychiatrist, put your judgment onto somebody else. And so that was her style. And that's how I saw it.
All right. Now, as far as the verbal or psychological abuse that Dr. Heidi and Dr. Dewey discussed, how would you categorize that?
What do you mean, how would I categorize that?
Like, would you describe it as severe? Would you describe it as moderate? Would you describe it as not consequential?
Well, you have to look at the person that it's happening to. So you have to look at Nicole, and I think that her personality style at least is a little bit more meek. So when you look at somebody like that, you would hope that someone with a stronger personality style would sort of tailor that a little bit more to accommodate that meek style. And I don't feel that her mom had that insight. And so I think that, some of what she said was aggressive. I think that some of what she said was definitely hurtful to Nicole. There's no doubt about that. Some of the terminology that she had told me, I don't think she told me skank, but some of the terminology that she told me, a lot of them, they're all bad words, I mean, that was used regularly. That wouldn't be my choice of words, but again, it's not my judgment call there.
Do you feel that the amount of abuse that she, or verbal and psychological abuse, would amount to rise to the level of battered child?
No.
And again, the evidence of the verbal abuse is things that were said, were told to you by Nicole Nachtman, correct?
Yes.
And there were no independent witnesses who observed her mom saying things like that to her?
No, I mean, I spoke with Joe, and he told me about how things were told to him, but no, there was no, that I could tell, there was nobody that witnessed any of these things that were said to her.
So, in though misplaced, do you feel that some of this verbal abuse and stuff was done in an attempt to motivate possibly improve her daughter?
Yes, and Joe told me about that too. I mean, the style that she used was sort of derogatory at times, and she was using that, picking out your flaws in order to make you try harder. That is a style that some people do. It certainly was done in medical school to me. But again, that is a style. It isn't the best style for certain personality types. Obviously, with Joe, it worked fine. He projected forward. But not everybody is going to receive that in the same way. And I think that Nicole did perceive that to be negative and very critical of her. I do think that, yeah.
But now, in some ways, up until college, Nicole was doing well in school.
Yes.
She was proceeding along well, correct?
Yes.
Do you feel that Mrs. Deans was an affectionate woman?
No.
Now, are all parents super affectionate with their children?
No, and it's different. I mean, I don't want to say she wasn't affectionate because Joe told me, that she hugged them and stuff like that. And, I was told that by the grandmother also. But she wasn't overly affectionate. She wasn't a lovey-dovey mom. She wasn't hugging and giving bear hugs and kisses and stuff like that. But again, not everybody does that. But that doesn't mean that you're a bad parent or you're an abusive parent because you're not lovey-dovey. It just doesn't. She had a different style. She's a military officer, and she just had a different style.
Doctor, a number of people have testified regarding changes they observed in Nicole, which they say began around middle school years.
Yeah.
Now, first of all, before I ask you for it, is it unusual for the personality of a child to change as they reach their teenage years?
No.
No, that's very common, actually. I mean, that's when you start seeing it. When people start separating and individuating from their parents, that's when you start seeing changes happen. That's why people say, watch out when they become teens. I mean, they start acting different and they rebel a little bit and things like that. That's very common.
So observations by the family that she was not dancing and singing all the time and suddenly like to get a computer in a room, that's not uncommon for teenagers, is it?
No, that's not uncommon.
Now, regarding the records you observed during your middle school years, did you observe any evidence or any signs of any mental illness during that time period?
From the Florida Air Academy?
Yes.
Yes, I did.
Okay. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
What I observed in the records were that there were some current concerns about multiple different things, bizarre behavior, not getting along with others, not fitting in, not remembering other kids' names. There were 29 other girls in the squadron. She didn't know any of them. That type of thing. I don't think that her dress was always appropriate. I think she had some problems there. She just had some different likes. The teachers, said that she, liked to shock people, some of her different likes. So that was another thing. She had some odd likes that maybe other kids her age didn't.
And then moving forward, what about her high school years? Is there any indications or any evidence of any sort of mental instability during that time?
I don't have any records from her high school. I only have Florida Air Academy records.
And then how about the college years? I think this is where we're supposed to get into with the depositions and stuff you covered. First of all, do you have any evidence or anything to indicate that she had any issues with her trip to London?
No, she told me it was a great time for her. Yeah.
Now, when she gets to Florida State, there are some discussions about her hygiene and other issues during her college years. Are you familiar with all that?
Yes.
You could talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, from her roommate, that's where I got most of that information from. She just said that she didn't take care of the room. She, even in spite of having the ability to take care of her room, she wouldn't take care of it. It was her roommate's impression. And it got to the point where she was just frustrated with her, threw her things out because she had discussions with her.
Why do you do that?
And she didn't really like people watching her sleep. So that sort of scared her a little bit. Nicole would sleep on her bed without any sheets on it. That was very atypical behavior. And that her roommate thought that she was rude and disrespectful, that Nicole could do these things, but she wouldn't.
So the roommate would say she could, but she just wouldn't do it?
Yeah, that was her impression. She said she was definitely capable to take care of herself.
Is it common as well, doctor, when children go off to college? And they don't
She
have
said that or Nicole said that?
supervisor, parent figure to tell them
Roommate
what
said
they
it or
should do?
Nicole said it?
Is it common that sometimes these people will fail to clean up, especially if they're already by nature sloppy or messy? Is that common?
That's totally common. I have a lot of my patients that are in college and college age, and that's actually one of the things that I talk with them about from that transition, because you go from a time where your parents are sort of controlling everything you do and your school schedule is so laid out. You go there, you go to school all day, and then you come home. That's very different when you go off to college, because now you're living on your own. You sort of can do what you want. You can eat what you want. You can dress how you want. And then your classes are sort of, you can go if you want to or not. I mean, Florida State University is a big university. So there's a lot of students. You can get lost in the crowd there. Until you get into your senior classes when there's a lot less people. But at the beginning, freshman class, I mean, there could be several hundred to 1,000 people in those classes. So people sort of get lost in the shuffle. So certainly one of the things I talk with my patients about when they get to that time.
All right, so that behavior in and of itself is not anything that would.
No, that's extremely normal.
What about the lack of hygiene that was discussed?
Well, that I wouldn't say that is extremely normal, but for the personality style that I believe Nicole has, it is normal. And some people, I mean, you know, they don't care enough about others or what others' opinions of them are that they don't care about that. That's not a priority to them. And so they don't really focus on that until it's imposed upon them to do. Once they're told to do it, they can do it, but it's not something that they will initiate on them on their own.
They don't care enough to do it. They don't care if they stink.
Because I'm not object to the constant leave.
I'll just say, don't leave the witness.
So could she do it if she wanted to?
Yes, it's my impression that she could do it if she wanted to. There's evidence to say that she could do all of these things when she wanted to.
Is there any evidence to show that from time to time she did take care of herself, or she did have care where she wore makeup and so forth?
Yes, when she was in London, she took care of herself. She talked to me about that. She bought clothes, she wore makeup, she did her hair. These were all things that she did without being prompted to do them, without any problem. And certainly while she was living, you know, with her parents, she did that because it was an expectation. And when she lived with Joey, she did it too. This was an expectation. But when she's on her own, it's not an expectation. So if she wants to do it, she can. And if she doesn't want to, she doesn't have to.
There's evidence, obviously, you read the transcript that her grades began to fall.
Yes.
Are you aware of that?
Yes, I am.
And do you have any opinion or any thoughts on it?
Well, in my experience, you know, when you study abroad, it is a lot easier, I want to say. I mean, and Nicole said there was more time between classes. You know, they're funner classes. You know, it's a different experience. It's supposed to be a positive experience when you study abroad. But then when you come back and you're in the atmosphere of the university setting and you're taking, you know, like when she got back, she's taking 12 credit hours. And college is difficult. It's not easy. And you have to do all the studying and everything on your own. That is a lot harder.
Very
and college
true.
is difficult by itself. The volume of material goes way up from high school to college. And again, it's one of the things I talk to my patients about because it is a common problem. A lot of students have a problem in their first semester because they just have to adjust to this new way of doing school, and it is hard. So it's not uncommon for that to happen.
And would you say there's also distractions in college as well?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of distractions in college, but I wouldn't say that that was probably one of the issues for Nicole necessarily because they're usually social distractions. And that wasn't something that was really interesting to her.
It's lazy distractions. That happens.
Someone forcing her to do her schoolwork that she could possibly just been letting her schoolwork go by the wayside.
Yeah, that's my impression. Again, she needed that discipline and she needed that. And she was used to being externally motivated. Now she has to be internally motivated. And that again is something, if you don't have that discipline when you're growing up and you're taught that discipline, it's hard to then all of a sudden get it. You know, it's something that has to be developed.
Doctor, there was also a lot of talk about her interest in Elsa and the Snow Queen or Gas Queen.
Yes.
What's your opinion about that?
Well, again, that's a whole fringe there. I mean, we have at the Tampa Convention Center this weekend, Comic-Con. It's a very common thing. And there is a section of people that enjoy that. It's not, again, out of the range of normal. It's a normal thing for people to do. You know, Power Rangers and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles have several patients that are interested in that. It doesn't make them abnormal or anything like that. It's a common thing that people that are adults do.
All right, so you did not feel that the fact that she wanted to dye her hair and to wear
Yeah, I'm gonna-
Sustained rephrase.
do you feel that because she wanted to dye her hair and wear an Elsa costume?
And
that
again,
was
I'm going to object to the leading nature of the question. But she's testifying very broadly as opposed to Ms. Nachtman. She can make her own analysis of the
Approach.
She was also, during that time period, there's been a lot of testimony regarding her interest in the computer.
Yes.
And being on the computer all the time.
Yes.
Doctor, what's your opinion about that?
Well, again, that was something that she really liked. It was a hobby to her. If somebody was doing sports, I wouldn't think anything about spending hours doing that. So again, that was one of the hobbies that she had. She liked to write. She liked to be in that fantasy world. She liked anime. These things were all on the computer. This is something that she really enjoyed. I didn't see that it was something that was wrong that she was doing. I just thought that it was something that she did. It was her hobby.
So, Doctor, after meeting with her and reviewing all the materials she previously mentioned, were you able to form a diagnosis regarding mental health of Nicole Nachtman?
Yes, I have multiple different diagnoses.
What were those?
Oh.
Um, the first one is an adjustment disorder with depressed mood.
Right, and explain what that
Okay.
is.
Well, an adjustment disorder pretty much is exactly what it sounds like. It's an adjustment.
hard
It's,
time
it's your
adjusting.
reaction to a change in your life. And this particular situation with Nicole, she describes to me starting to feel depressed when she came back from London. That, you know, just what she had the expectation of college was totally different than what it was. She thought it was going to be easier than it was. And she thought she was going to do better based upon how she did when she was in school, in high school. You know, she always talks about how she made a 3.8 GPA in high school. So she just thought that automatically translates into college, your performance there. And it doesn't. Again, just based upon the structure and the volume and different things like that, it requires a certain amount of work. And I believe that, you know, because she started doing poorly, that it really affected her emotionally. And so I gave her that diagnosis,
Well,
adjustment disorder, depressed mood. She
You kinda
describes being
have to
depressed.
go
She
to
describes
class
sort
to
of
do
floating out to sea,
well in
not
class.
really knowing a direction because she thought she was doing something. And then it wasn't turning out how she thought it was going to turn out. And it made her sad. So that's exactly what it says. An adjustment disorder with depressed mood. Depression was the emotional response to that adjustment.
So what are the symptoms?
Just marked as stress that's out of proportion to the stressor. So she described herself as being very sad as it related to this, as to recognizing how she was doing in school. And it just wasn't what she had expected.
What other diagnoses? do you have?
The second one was an avoidant personality disorder.
Right, explain to the jury what that is.
Personality disorders, I describe to patients as the lens through which we view the world. So how does a person look at the world? Everybody, you know, is born looking at the world in a different way. And, you know, we sort of classify it in psychiatry in different clusters, A, B, and C. The A cluster we describe as an odd cluster, and there is schizotypal, schizoid, paranoid personality disorder. Cluster B is the dramatic cluster, and in that is antisocial, narcissistic, borderline, and histrionic personality. And then cluster C is a
That's the
nervous
Amber
personality
Heard
style.
personality.
And in that cluster is avoidant, obsessive compulsive, passive aggressive, and dependent personality styles. I gave Nicole a personality disorder diagnosis of each one of those clusters, which is rare to do, but in this particular case, it fits. So that's why I did that. So the one that she met the most criteria, the full criteria for, is avoidant personality disorder. That's the first one I'm going to talk about. Again, that's in that cluster C, the nervous personality style. And in that personality disorder, there's 7 different criteria, and you only need to meet 4 of those criteria in order to get that diagnosis, and she meets all 7.
What are the
Oh, damn.
The 7, the first one is avoiding occupational activities that involve significant interpersonal contact because of fears of criticism, disapproval, or rejection. And certainly Nicole fits that criteria. I'm talking about occupational as her school because she didn't have a job outside of school. Number 2 is unwilling to get involved with people unless certain of being liked. She had one friend, Laura, and the connection they had was immediate because they both liked anime. And so she knew automatically that they could be friends, and they were. Number 3, shows restraint within intimate relationships because of the fear of being shamed or ridiculed. Certainly in her relationship with her mother, that was the case. And I believe in other relationships too, with depositions, it shows that there's a distance between Nicole and people because if somebody got to know her, they would criticize her. That was her perception. Number 4 is preoccupied with being criticized and rejected in social situations, a similar kind of thing. 5 is inhibited in new interpersonal situations because of feelings of inadequacy. Certainly, Nicole had that. She said that multiple times in the interview with me, and in spite of me saying, no, that's not the case, Nicole, she just thought that. She thinks negatively of herself. And that's classic for this disorder. Number 6, views self as socially inept, personally unappealing, or inferior to others. Again, Nicole fits that.
Others.
It's just how she sees herself. That's unfortunate, but that's, again, part of this personality style. And number 7 is unusually reluctant to take personal risks or to engage in any new activities because they may prove embarrassing. And there was one instance of one of the friends of Nicole, they were trying to get her to go swimming and she wouldn't. Not only was she, paranoid about her physical appearance, but just didn't want to mess up kind of thing. So again, that meets the criteria. So she meets full criteria for that personality style.
All right. So now you give us 2, you said there's more. What's the other one?
The second one is schizotypal personality disorder. You guys have already heard about that a little bit, but I want to talk with you a little bit about that. Again, that's in that cluster A, the weird personality or the odd personality cluster. There are 9 different criteria. You need 5 in order to meet that diagnosis, and Nicole meets 7 of them. So I'll talk with you guys about those. Number 1, ideas of reference. You guys have already heard about them. I'll just briefly talk about that. It's when you see something and you take it personally, you make a personal feeling about it or a personal value onto it. And the case, as you guys have heard about these posters, thinking that a poster is actually having a personal meaning to you. That's what an idea of reference is. So she definitely had that. Odd thinking in speech, vague, circumstantial, metaphorical, over elaborate, stereotyped. That's certainly the way Nicole was in my interview. Just over elaborate, talking about something over and over again. Very circumstantial. Would start talking about a topic, go all the way around it, and then come back to it. That kind of odd speech. She would say a lot of phrases over and over again, as if she'd said it before. And then I see depositions, and she did say to other experts the same phrase to describe the same thing. That meets that criteria. Suspiciousness or paranoid ideation. Certainly Nicole had that. She has a thing about anybody, what their motivations are about her, why are they saying the things that they're saying. Now, it's based in reality because Nicole has had some experiences with other people, other kids, that they've sort of tricked her, and it's made her a little paranoid about things she says to people. So it's not delusional of any type. It actually happened and made her paranoid about other people. Inappropriate or constricted affect. It's very obvious that there is inappropriate and constricted affect in this room here. And it was in the interview with me as well. Just maybe smiling when it really wasn't appropriate, or maybe being very, flat whenever it's not appropriate, not as much animation in certain things and an over animation in other things. So again, that goes with that. Behavior or appearance that is odd, eccentric, or peculiar. Certainly in my interview with Nicole, she has a different appearance. And it's not off in the sense of not anatomically off, but just odd, different way of doing the hair, different mannerism in terms of how she's sitting and how she's speaking. That meets that criteria. Lack of close friends or confidants other than first degree relatives. You guys already know that based upon everything that you've heard, that really she only had one really good friend.
What is wrong with having just one really good friend?
So again, meets that criteria. And the final criteria, excessive social anxiety that does not diminish with familiarity and tends to be associated with paranoid fears rather than negative judgments of self. Now, I believe that she has sort of both of those things, paranoid fears and negative judgments of self. And we'll talk about that in the last personality style we're talking about. But certainly she has social anxiety around other people, and she meets that criteria.
Well, what's the last personality type you wanted?
The last personality type is borderline personality disorder.
Sorry, can you explain what that is?
That's in the cluster B, the dramatic personality style category. Now that they have 9 criteria there, you only need to meet 5 criteria to meet that. And she meets 6 of those criteria. So one of them is a pattern of unstable and intense interpersonal relationships characterized by alternating between extremes of idealization and devaluation. Now, she didn't have a lot of relationships, so that's one of the issues, but that's because of her other personality styles. I'm focusing on the relationship she has, and the primary relationship she had that she describes to me is her mother, her relationship with her mother. And, you look at the deposition from Laura, her best friend, who knew her the best and did see interactions between her mom and Nicole, even if they're just on the phone, and she could see, and she said she loved her. Nicole loved her mom, but at the same time, she'd be very negative about her. And certainly with me, that was the case. And so she meets that criteria, that what we call splitting or black and white thinking regarding her mom. Identity disturbance, markedly and persistently unstable self-image or sense of self. Nicole doesn't have a sense of self. She doesn't really fit in. She has a hard time understanding where she belongs because she realizes that she's different and she doesn't really know where she fits in. That's classic for this personality style. And they just,
Nicole, I
that
feel you,
emptiness
lady.
inside, it makes them very sad. And that's definitely the case in Nicole's case.
Just don't kill
Impulsivity
people.
in at least 2
That
areas that are
doesn't help.
potentially self-damaging. The 2 areas that I thought that Nicole had this that were self-damaging were spending and binge eating. She didn't have a lot of money. The money that she got was from her mother, but she overspent it. From what Laura said, she got an allowance of like $50 per week, but she was always behind. She was borrowing money from different people. She borrowed money from David in order to pay the housing. So she was overspending the money that she had. And then the binge eating, she'd eat a bunch of junk food and things like that and hide the wrappers. And did that to her detriment because she was at the same time trying to lose weight. So again, that's something that's very common in someone with borderline personality disorder. Affective instability due to a marked reactivity of mood. So I definitely saw this where they can have episodes of happiness and then intense dysphoria or intense sadness, giddiness and sadness. And that happened here. It happened in my interview. It happened in the phone call, where she's very happy and then she would get somber. That is a classic for this personality style. And so again, that she met the criteria. Chronic feelings of emptiness. We talked about this already due to that lack of sense of self. Just don't know who you are, where you are. She talks about drifting off to sea. She just doesn't know who she is. There's no compass. She has no direction. That sense of emptiness is classic for borderline personality disorder. And the final one, transient stress-related paranoid ideation or severe dissociative symptoms. Now, I didn't ever think that Nicole had any dissociative symptoms, but certainly she had stress-related paranoid ideation where she would get stressed out about, her mom finding out these things, and then she'd get very, very paranoid about it. Again, she would tell that to other people in depositions, has talked about, don't tell mom, don't tell mom, don't tell mom, that kind of thing. Paranoid, overly paranoid for what the situation was. Again, that's classic for borderline personality disorder.
Other than those disorders you discussed, personality disorders, did you find any other in diagnosis?
Yes, I looked at a couple other things. We don't call them diagnoses necessarily, but causes for clinical concern. One of them is parent-child relational problem, which is a V code. And that goes without saying. She had difficulties with her mom. There was a parent-child relational problem. That's all that it means. But because of this situation and this cases that we're dealing with, it's a cause for clinical concern because it's the whole basis of why I'm evaluating her. And then the final one, I also characterize or have had clinical concerns about malingering in this case.
Right. What is malingering?
It's an intentional production of false or grossly exaggerated physical or psychological symptoms motivated by external incentives. And in this particular case, this legal situation.
Is there an actual test for that, or do you give actual tests for that?
I did a screening test called the SIMS, but it is a clinical examination. It's a clinical evaluation and a clinical judgment. And that was my clinical judgment as well.
Yeah.
But the SIMS, which is a test, was supportive of my clinical judgment.
Okay. And how do you administer that test?
It's a true-false test. Let me get to that. It's a true-false test that it is 75 questions, and you circle true and false.
Sure. Not to hold anything up to the jury, it has admitted into evidence.
Okay, sorry about that.
And so it comes with instructions on the test,
Yes, there's instructions on the front.
right? Doctor, if you could read the instructions to the jury, what the instructions?
This booklet contains a series of statements. If you agree with a statement or feel that it's true or usually true, circle true. If you disagree with a statement or you feel that it's false or usually untrue for you, circle false. Please do not skip any items. Please answer all the items the best that you can, even if some are hard or do not seem to apply to you. For example, if you don't have any problems with your memory or if you feel your memory changes have been gradual, you would circle false for this item. I have had a sudden change in my memory. If you make a mistake or you want to change your answer, do not erase. Draw an X through your answer you want to change, and then circle the correct answer. Before you begin answering the items, please fill in your name, today's date, your gender, your age, and your date of birth, and spaces provided at the top of the next page.
And is that the test you administered to Nicole Nachtman?
Yes.
And
Yes.
what was your final evaluation on this Nachtman regarding malingering?
She was high on some of the scales of malingering.
Now, Dr. Heumann testified earlier today, and he testified that she was
What?
0 on the scale of malingering as to psychosis.
Correct.
Do you agree with that finding?
Yes.
So you did not find her malingering when it came to psychosis, but did you find her malingering to other aspects?
Well, that's consistent with my interview. She didn't report any symptoms of psychosis, so that was consistent with my interview that she was not malingering psychosis because she wasn't reporting those symptoms. What she did score high on was neurological impairment, affective disorders, which are mood disorders, and amnestic disorders, which is memory problems.
Okay.
But aside from those diagnoses, let me ask you this: did you feel that this Nachtman suffered from schizophrenia?
No,
Okay, why not?
because she doesn't meet the criteria for schizophrenia.
Right? What does she not meet in your opinion?
She doesn't have any of the symptoms. Hallucinations, she doesn't have any hallucinations. I asked her directly about symptoms consistent with schizophrenia. She denied that. I asked her about the screaming that I read in other reports. She denied that it was screaming. She said that it was a high-pitched tone that she heard, like a flat line. She never described any hallucinations. She never described any voices. She never described visual hallucinations. She never described delusions. I asked her specifically about those items. She did not endorse any of those, which was consistent also with the jail medical records that said she did not have any psychotic symptoms. Nicole was not reporting psychotic symptoms to me, and I asked her extensively about it because I knew it was a cause for clinical concern. Schizotypal personality disorder, as you guys know, I diagnosed her with that. And there are specific things that I look for in that diagnosis. And I specifically asked her about, do you have any types of odd beliefs? Do you think any things have special meanings to you specifically? She denied that, except for to say that she thought that, certain colors had certain meanings, like purple meant royalty, which is consistent with average people, what average people think. Average people think that purple is royalty. Her birthstone's an amethyst, which is also purple. So she had talked about that. I asked her, do you feel like others talk about you? Trying to elicit some paranoid ideations. And she gave me examples in reality of people talking about her. She gave me an example about some kids in 5th grade that she was singing and some kids appeared to like what she was doing. And then some other kids were talking bad about her behind her back. And then so she said, yes, people have talked about me before, but that is in reality. That is not a psychotic symptom at all. So I asked I said, do you feel that others are, do you like people? Because that's another thing. People are schizophrenic, psychotic. They don't really relate to others. She said it's 50-50. It depends upon the person. I don't like hanging around mean people. So all of this stuff is reality based. This is not delusions. This is not somebody talking about all kinds of odd things. I've evaluated thousands of people, many people with schizophrenia, and I have not ever had somebody that is psychotic when I'm asking these types of questions for them not to go off into something psychotic. I know the types of questions to ask people to elicit those symptoms because I want to know if they have those. And she did not report those.
Are you currently treating people with schizophrenia?
Yes.
The doctors before had mentioned that they opined that her delusion was that her mom was going to kill her. Did she
Yes.
describe that to you?
Yes, she did talk about saying that she felt that her mom was going to kill her. It's the whole basis for this crime.
Right. Did you feel it was a delusion?
No,
And explain why not.
I felt that it was her rationale to be able to get out of the consequences of her actions. So I thought that that was the basis of malingering, that she felt that her mother was going to hurt her, and she put that forth as the rationale for this. I did not believe that that was a delusion.
So you don't believe she really truly thought that at the time?
No, I don't believe that she thought that at the time. And in fact, let me just say that one of the things that sort of supported that was when I spoke with her about after she had killed Bob, and because she said the whole basis for all of this was that her mom wanted to kill her. Well, then I asked her, or then she had said, she came forward with this and just said, my mom didn't want to kill me before. She is going to want to now, and her feeling would be justified because I killed Bob. If she had a delusion about that, she would never have said that. She would never have said, if my mom wanted to kill me before, she certainly wants to kill me now, because she knows that that's not the case. So she said after she killed Bob, then it was justified that her mom would want to kill her. She didn't have that thought before.
Doctor, you testified that you've been in court and testified regarding insanity. So are you familiar with the insanity standard under Florida law?
Yes.
I like
After
this
doing
lady.
evaluations and reviewing all the material, were you able to come up with an opinion as to whether Ms. Nachtman was insane when she killed Robert and Mary Deans?
Yes.
What is that opinion?
She was not insane at the time of the crimes.
I'd like to, Doctor, if we could go through the instruction.
They're going to ask her how much she's being paid for her
Starting with-
services as well.
There's two basic elements that need to be met in this particular instance, correct?
Yes.
The first one is she had a mental infirmity, disease, or defect, and I believe you described what those were in your opinion.
Yes.
So let's go to the next section. Because of this condition, she did not know what she was doing or the consequences. Now, before I get into that, let me
Yes.
ask you, Doctor, do you believe there's any evidence based on what you've seen that would indicate that she was suffering from a psychosis at the time of the crimes?
No.
All right, and why is that?
She was actively speaking with her family members during the commission of this crime, saw David after she killed her father, and was planning to kill her mother. And there was no indication from him that she was acting out of sorts or being psychotic. She had a normal conversation with him. She got the $100 from him, and he talked about her. They hugged each other and asked when they were going to see each other again. That is not a psychotic interaction.
There you go.
She called her grandmother and told her that she was leaving. Sorry she didn't get to see her before she went, and said goodbye to her. She got communication from FSU, got the $100 from David, deposited that into her bank account, filled out the housing paperwork, scanned it, and sent it back to FSU between the killing of her father and the killing of her mother.
Would a person who's suffering a psychotic break be able to do all that?
No, that requires executive functioning. And people with schizophrenia do not have that. They cannot plan like that. They're so caught up in their delusion,
That's very
they're not in
true.
reality. So the fact that she's able to communicate with a university, come up with where she's going to get money, go to the bank, deposit it, scan in an item, or fill it all out, scan in an item, send it back to university, and get housing between killing one person and killing
People
the
with
second person.
an
is
active
incompatible
episode of
with schizophrenia.
schizophrenia.
What other evidence
cannot-
would you say would be incompatible with schizophrenia during the course of these crimes?
Hygiene has been discussed extensively. For somebody that could not clean themselves, they could clean up an entire murder scene, bleach the entire murder scene, clean it up.
I'm gonna object to the characterization of this
Whoa,
evidence.
whoa, 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 bro.
Look at that look. She's annoyed.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will take a break, just so you know.
Okay, and we will take a break because I have to go let that puppy out. And you will have to come back for more on the next one. Because she is saucy. She's saucy. I like her. Now, of course, when the defense's witnesses are up, they're for the defense. And when the prosecution witnesses are up, they're for the prosecution. And whatever. And so they're on the sides of the sides. But quite honestly, when somebody's testimony makes sense, it makes sense. I don't know. Again, tell me what you think in the comments below. But her testimony makes more sense than the other two. And it just does. I mean, in all reality, yes. If you're going to sit there and say that they're just having a psychotic break, no, she's not going to be able to do all of this work in between and planning and cleaning up and then no. Okay. Let's come back for the next one. Watch the next episode. And we'll get into more of this testimony. And it shall be more spice and snark. Just see that she's a very young lady. She does not like the objections from the defense. But okay. All right. Like, subscribe, comment, do all of the things. And come back for more. All right.